So welcome back to week 4 of your paper trebuchet project. Now this week's worth of work is something that I really enjoy doing myself. It's drawing, and in particular in DT we try to get you to draw in isometric, and this is a word that you've probably heard floating around a little bit before. Some of you may have tried to draw in isometric before, or perhaps it's something that is completely new to you. So what we'll ask you to do first is to have a look at the YouTube clips that I have linked in the resources box right here. And these are really useful for you to help you understand what isometric drawing is, but also in terms of how to actually set up an isometric drawing. Now, boys that have tried this before sometimes find that it is something that they think is maybe quite challenging, but hopefully towards the end of this lesson you'll find that it is something not to be scared of and something that you can actually enjoy doing yourself. So once you finish watching the YouTube videos, what we would like you to try and do is to have a go at drawing your own trebuchet in isometric. So essentially what you're doing when you're drawing in isometric is drawing something at a rough 30-degree angle. It doesn't have to be precisely 30 degrees, but it allows you to see the front face, the side face, and a little bit of the top face, depending on what angle you are drawing it from. There are several different drawing styles that you've probably come across without actually even realising it, and I'll show you that in the next clip right here. So you've got isometric, which is our first one, and you can see, just as I said here, we've got our front face, we've got our side face, and we've got our top face. And the beauty of drawing an isometric, as you can see from the image, is that it doesn't lose its proportions in any way, and you're able to see a lot of the faces, and it's quite realistic in that sense. Now, the type of drawing that we try to avoid in DT is this one in the middle, the oblique drawing. And you can easily see, even though these are the three of the same products, that it's very distorted. So instead of the front face, which you can see quite clearly here is a perfect cube, when you look at it from the side, so from the orange view, it becomes elongated and stretched. Okay, nearly, I'd say probably about 1.5 its actual length. So that's not ideal. If you're looking at a product much more complex than just a cube, obviously this is going to have quite a bit of impact on what your drawing actually looks like, to the point where it probably doesn't look like the product that you're trying to draw, if that makes sense. And the same obviously happens to the top face, which is pretty much a mirror of the side face, but obviously on the top surface. Now, your last drawing style is perspective drawing, something that you may have tackled in art before. And it's quite a useful one in product design in particular, because it does actually give quite a realistic view of the product, because you've got your vanishing points, and obviously your eyes can only focus on certain parts of the product at any one time, so it is quite realistic. But the downside of the perspective drawing is, if you were trying to put measurements on the product, let's say, it becomes a little bit harder to interpret, because actually what you've got here, looking at this perspective drawing, this distance here, when you compare it to this distance on the front, which we know is actually the same length because it's a cube, you can see that it's longer on that front edge, and that's because that's the edge that is in the focus point. So for the purpose of today's exercise, we're going to ignore the perspective and the oblique drawing and focus on the isometric to give us a really neat, precise, accurate drawing. On this slide, I've just included a few different images of isometric drawing. Now, those of you that were in year 7 and 8, you've probably all seen these, if not had a go at some of these drawings yourself. Typically, when we get you to do isometric drawing in the lower years, we give you some isometric paper which has lines drawn at 30 degrees already for you. And all you need to do, and you can just about make it out on these images, is that you kind of follow along on the lines at your 30-degree angle to recreate your shape or whatever your task might have been. Obviously, we don't expect you to have isometric paper at home, so the 30 degrees that you're drawing to can be there or thereabouts. But what I actually wanted to show you on this page was just how going from something that is very rigid, stuck to the grid, like in that first image, can actually become something quite beautiful. So moving on to this second image here, where we've got a variety of different lamps. Now, I can't see any evidence of 30-degree lines being measured or drawn, but what you have is a beautiful selection of lamps that have been drawn really accurately. And the importance of the isometric drawing is getting your starting point set up accurately. If you don't get that drawn up accurately, it is only going to go downhill from there. So my advice to you when you're going through this challenge, or this task, sorry, is to spend a bit of time setting it all up to begin with, and then hopefully with the correct setup, you'll find actually completing the rest of your drawing or the rest of your trebuchet a lot easier to do. This one I particularly like because it's quite dynamic, it's quite fluid. He's not been too precious over it, so it's very different to the lamps that we've just seen on the previous picture. And again, you can see, even though nothing has been precisely measured at 30 degrees, everything is kind of following this 30-degree line. So if we just pick up on this point here, if I was to then draw a line that's roughly speaking probably a little bit shallower than 30 degrees, and that's what he's used to construct this cube, or this square here, which has then helped him to set up the rest of his drawing to then obviously produce the hairdryer. So it's quite a clever way that he's worked by giving almost central data points throughout the product, which he's then used as focal points. And this last image I just really like. I think it's been drawn beautifully. It's very stylized, very much what you would expect to see at maybe university level. Some of our A-level boys will probably achieve drawings to this standard, but again, it's one that is drawn very precisely, but it's still got a few of the construction lines left in there, which I quite like because it makes the drawing seem a little bit more real, a little bit more rough and ready. It shows us how he's helped to set it up, and it just makes everything a little bit easier to understand. And he's obviously then also put in some thicker lines for the outline of the product, but he's also given us a little bit of shadow through some hatching that we've got going on, and it just works really nicely. So have a go at your trebuchet in isometric, and I hope after following along from the videos and seeing these images that we've got on this page, you'll find it something that is more enjoyable and something that you'll be quite proud of at the end of the lesson.